reminded me of this mentally. I got it. I got your mental message. All right, so yesterday, when you were on Zoom and they were in here, we were talking about the different planes. This is how we divide an animal into different quadrants. So we're gonna go over as if it's the first time that you guys have heard it.
I'm not gonna lie, I was literally thinking about that.
Yeah, I'm a little bit sensitive to stuff like that. All right, so we're gonna go over this as if this is the first time you guys have heard it, because these directional terms and these planes of anatomy is a very visual thing, and it was pretty limited as to what you could see on Zoom. So you guys in my television audience, this is gonna be a lovely review for you guys. So the planes to divide an animal into quadrants. We first need to remember we're dividing what from what. And that's the easiest way to remember these planes. If I am dividing my left from my right, I need to split myself down the middle. This imaginary plane is called sagittal. That's how we say this word, sagittal. Now the thing is about the sagittal plane is it does not necessarily have to be equal. If I cut myself here, did I separate right from left? How about here? If I'm doing equal right and left, this is a term called the mid-sagittal plane, otherwise known as the median or middle. Sagittal is telling you it's left from right. Using the term mid-sagittal tells you we're equal. Does that make sense to everybody? The next one is transverse. Trans meaning across. Transverse separates my top from my bottom, my head from my tail. So it's going to be this way. This way. And again, it does not have to be equal. If I cut myself here, did I separate top from bottom? Yep. How about down here? Yep. Now the thing is we need to remember, although yes, it is good for you to practice these planes of anatomy on yourself, we got to remember one little thing. We are bipeds. We walk on 2 feet. The animals that we are actually learning about are quadrupeds. They walk on 4 feet. So it's fine if my dog right here is standing in a biped. Here's my transverse separating head from tail. But look what happens. It's the same plane. Mentally, we got to adapt. Put him here. This is why I'm saying instead of trying to remember the lines out on you, remember what it's separating, what from what. So the transverse plane on my quadruped is actually going to be here. But if I turn him up, you see how that's actually the same on me? So the transverse, we're separating head from tail. Finally, I have the dorsal plane, and this was my sassy dance. This is the plane that is separating my back, which is the dorsal, from my front, which is the ventral. I remember ventral because to ventilate. You're inflating lungs, your lungs are on the front. Dorsal fin of a fish located on the back. Here on my dog, it would be here, separating the bottom here, the front, from the back. But if I tip him up, you can see that on me, it is the same plane. We just have to adjust our brains for the quadruped. Does that make sense? So when I do this dorsal plane move, and he does this dorsal plane move, and now I'm on all fours, and I do my dorsal plane move, it's the same plane. Just got to adjust your thinking for the quadruped. For some unknown reason, I have no idea why your textbook decided to use a kangaroo. Kind of weird, kind of bizarre. Should have brought I gotta remember to bring one of my stylets in here. All right, so this plane here. Oops, that's terrible. This is going everywhere. Let's make that a little neater. Here. This, I keep forgetting this one's a touch screen. That's so funny. So when I'm at home, when I was doing Zoom, like we were at 100% Zoom last term, I was just do all over this computer. I love that it's a touch screen. And I got here, and what's the first thing I did to my desktop computer? Tried using it as a touch screen. And then I got used to not using the touch screen, and then I forget that this one is. So my brain is just all over the place. All right, so this plane right here that I'm drawing separates what from what? The top from the bottom, which is what plane? The transverse plane. Top from bottom. It's going to be right here. Top from bottom, pull them apart, transverse. All right, here I have separated. Not necessarily, because we have this in semi-quadruped. I got a dog coming up. It's probably going to be a little bit clearer for you. So this is, again, all you got to remember is separating what from what. It does not matter the stance of the animal. If it is a non-human primate on bipedal, or if it is a dog and cat on quadrupeds. If you remember, head from tail is transverse. You get it right every time. This plane is separating what from what? The back from the front. And what plane separated the back from the front? My sassy plane, the dorsal plane. This square plane, you can't really see it, but it's actually, if I am now facing, I am now the kangaroo. And it's hitting me right here. That's going to be my sagittal. And if it's doing equal right and left, mid-sagittal or medial. Both are correct, interchangeable. There's my puppy dog, quadruped. Do this one more time. Here, separating what from what? Separating back from front. That's my dorsal plane. Here, separating head from tail, transverse plane, and then here, sagittal. I think it's because it's just 2D. It is 2D. That's why I brought this guy in. So this guy in the same, we got our transverse, dorsal, sagittal. So sagittal and medial are the same thing? Sagittal, if you just say sagittal, it's not necessarily equal right and left. If you're specifically referring to an equal right and left, then you would say specifically mid-sagittal. If you just say sagittal, I'm going to assume it's unequal. There's one more on here that I want to make sure that you guys are clear on, and that's right here.
Is there ever be a situation where you measure on mid-sagittal?
If you would measure what on mid-sagittal?
So if you use it in a sagittal direction, wouldn't it automatically be split down the middle? Why would it be uneven on one side or the other?
Honestly, for our terminology, for our veterinary use, the term we most commonly use is sagittal. We assume it's equal down the middle. We just need to learn the literal definition of sagittal versus mid-sagittal. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the extremities for a minute. Extremity is a fancy word for your front legs and your back legs. Sorry, I was not going to hit you. I promise, I was not going to hit you. All right, so I've got my extremity. Now, here's where the confusion lies. What plane, when I cut this extremity, what plane is parallel to this? Parallel meaning the same direction. Dorsal. This is where the confusion lies, because this is not a dorsal plane. When we are looking at extremities, we need to put the animal in this position mentally. So now, if I have separated my leg, what plane is it on?
Transverse.
The transverse plane. So even though on this picture, and this is why I don't like that they didn't do a comparative picture. On this picture, it's deceiving because it looks like it's on the dorsal plane. Extremities are not, they are on the transverse plane. What questions can I answer for you about that?
So we should always think of when we're classifying this stuff like to an animal or of an animal, we should just always think of it.
You can't, it
up and down.
kind of depends on how your brain works. Some visual learners are going to do best in automatically putting the animal in a bipedal position in order to remember them. Other people are going to do better just simply remembering it separates what from what. Top from bottom, front from back. Do what, hon?
What would be the top and the bottom for the animal? Like, is this the top?
So this would be the top.
Okay, so when you're looking at them like that, the top is around.
Yeah, so here, if you stretch this leg out as if the animal is laying down, now you can see. So I'm a terrible drawer, and I'm gonna need to do this on the whiteboard. Oh my gosh, you guys are gonna see how awful a drawer I am. All right, let me do it this way, and erase.
Yeah, that's how
I'm actually kind of impressed with that myself, you guys. I was drawing it, I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing it. All right, so if we are going to be separating the head from the tail using the transverse plane, right? Do you see how that worked?
Yeah.
How the extremity is separated? That's what I'm talking about. Same thing back here. All right, so moving along from our planes to our directions. Why are directions important? Well, as a technician, there are certain, well, they're not certain. There are different shifts, right? You'll have the morning shift, you'll have the afternoon shift. If you work EC or overnights. And it's important to do your rounds. It's also important that me as a technician, I am able to convey in writing a message that you are able to follow without having to ask me about it. So let me say I have had a patient come in the morning, and that patient has a small laceration. Laceration means a cut, very small. And that cut happens to be here, kind of off near the shoulder, close to the back. It's a golden retriever, and I've had to put in a couple of stitches. Maybe got in a fight. As a technician, I am the one that can put in the stitches. The rule is I can close holes, I just can't put in any new ones. Yeah, I'm not allowed to prescribe medication. I can't diagnose, and I can't perform surgery. But the surgery is limited to I can't put in another hole. If there's a hole there from a spay, a surgery, an injury, that's me that's going to close that with the suture pattern. Golden Retriever is a very hairy dog, and even though I've had to clip and clean the wound, I want to do that judiciously. I want to clip as little hair as possible because we don't want a naked Golden Retriever. You know, I don't want to be like, because we're cutting it down to the skin, have this big, huge patch of baldness for a cut this big. So you, 10 days later, are the technician. Maybe it's my day off. You're now the technician. The owner comes in to get the sutures removed. You need to be able to read my notes and find the location of this small cut, these tiny sutures, on this hairy dog. So what I would use are my directional terms. I would say that perhaps it was dorsal to the scapula, lateral dorsal to the scapula, and that on the left or the right side. And it's these directional terms that you'll be able to decipher, just like a treasure map, and find the injury and clip out the sutures.
Scapula is shoulder.
Scapula is your shoulder blade. These terms are generally paired. I say generally. Most of them have pairs, and they have opposite meanings. A great example would be my left from my right. Big thing to note, we're talking about the animal's left and right. I don't care about your left and right. When you're looking at the animal, and I have an injury on the right shoulder, you need to make sure you are looking at the animal's right shoulder. Because if you are staring at the animal like I am staring at you right now face to face, it is not a mirror image. This is my left hand. Show me your left hand. We're in a handshake. So that's important. If you are looking at the animal, that you are not looking at it as a mirror image. Because in the mirror, I raise my left hand and he raises that hand. I need to make sure that I'm referring to the animal's physical left from right. Cranial means towards the head. My shoulders are cranial to the location of my belly button. If you wanted to describe for me, where are your shoulders in relation to your hips? Your shoulders are cranial to your hips. Rostral refers to the head specifically. Rostral refers to the head specifically. Movement towards the nose. Rostral is a medical term for nose, the rostrum. So rostral. So for example, if you look, my eyes are rostral to my ears. They are in this direction from my ears. Caudal is the term for tail. You probably, in med term, talked about this, caudate means to have a tail. So caudal means this direction. My hips are caudal to my shoulders, this direction. Shoulders are cranial to my hips. Hips are caudal to my shoulders. Dorsal means movement towards the back. Ventral means movement towards the front. These are going to be important when I also ask you how to lay down this animal. Medial, well, not so much medial, but ventral, dorsal, and lateral. If I threw him back to me. Oh, that was my fault. That was a terrible catch. Here I have my pet, and I'm going to tell you to put him in dorsal recumbency. How are you going to lay down this animal?
Back up.
Recumbency is the term to lay down. If I say I want this animal in dorsal recumbency, I want you to lay him on his back. If I say that I want you to lay this animal in lateral recumbency, your first question should be, what side? So I want you to lay this animal in right lateral recumbency, which means the right side is down. Left lateral recumbency, the left side is down. So medial towards the middle, lateral towards the sides. Deep is a hard one for me to have a charade to. Deep is just, okay, imagine I have a knife and I plunge it into someone's belly and it goes past the skin, it goes past the connective tissue, it goes into the muscle and into the abdominal cavity. That's a deep wound. Versus superficial, which is just going to be here just on the surface, not exceeding the dermis and epidermis. So really anything that goes past the dermis would be considered deep. Anything that is maintained on the dermis would be superficial. Proximal and distal. I went over this quite a bit yesterday. Jack. I'm drawing all over myself today. Proximal and distal are in reference to your appendages only. Arms and legs, front legs, back legs. Distal. So here I've got my D and my P. Distal refers to movement in this direction. I am putting distance between my trunk and my branch. Proximal is in this direction. So looking at this P and D, my elbow is where in relation to my wrist? Yeah, so I'm asking, where is my elbow compared to my wrist? Proximal. My elbow is proximal to my wrist. My elbow is distal to my shoulder. Where is my wrist in relation to my fingers? Proximal. My fingers are distal to my wrist.
So the second word is where you picture yourself starting, and then the first word is where it's going to.
So whenever I say in relation to, that's where I am comparing. So if I say, where is my knee in relation to my hip?
Distal.
Distal. So I'm asking you, what location is my knee in comparison to my hip? It is distal to my hip. My hip is proximal to my knee. My carpus, not my carpus, my tarsus is where in relation to my toes? Proximal. My toes are distal to my tarsus. How does everybody feel about that?
I thought of a little sheet for distal. As you're moving distal, you're moving towards
Moving towards your, yeah, distal moving towards the digits. That's great. Distal moving towards your distance. The way I remember it is you're putting distance. Distal. Why do we care? Well, let's say you are now a technician, you are an LVT, you are taking a radiograph. What am I going to do to you if you call it an X-ray?
position.
Yeah, I'm going to punch you in the face. It's not an X-ray. We use X-ray energy to produce a radiograph. Take a radiograph, and I'm the one, as a technician, the doctors have very little hands-on with the animals. That's one of the reasons why I never became a vet, because I like the hands-on. I take the radiograph and I do the initial assessment of the radiograph. Then my doctor comes in and says, what do you see? And I tell him my assessment, and he either concurs, will make an addition. Very rarely do they disagree. But I would say to him, I'm seeing a small hairline fracture in the distal third of the radius ulna. Just with that description, he will know exactly where to look. Show me on your left, first off, do you guys know where your radius and ulna are? It's these two bones right here. Show me the distal third. Very nice. Distal third. So what that has told him is that I'm seeing something here near the epiphysis or the end of that bone in this area right here. The proximal third would be here. And then my midline third or my shaft would be here. So when we're looking at our long bones, it's very important to know your proximals from your distals. When I test you over the weekend, I'm going to give you questions similar to what I've just given you today. I might have a picture of a dog and ask you, where is his elbow compared to his tarsus or carpus? I might just have word questions that say, where is this structure in relation to this structure? And you're going to need to tell me, is it distal, is it proximal? Questions, comments, concerns?
I'm having a hard time understanding.
Proximal and distal?
Yeah.
Okay, come on up. Can I draw on you?
Yeah.
Come. This is going to be great. Are your pants off? What is happening right now?
Because when I sit down, they get really tight.
Oh, okay. Okay, you're going to need to take your jacket off just momentarily. All right, we're going to roll up your sleeve. I'm going to draw on you. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
It washes right off, I promise.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to touch your hand. My hand is a little cold. I apologize. This is your elbow, right? This is your tarsus. If we're moving in this direction towards your body, it's proximal. If we're moving away from your body, it's distal. Tell me where your wrist is compared to your elbow. Proximal. So what direction, if I'm going from your elbow to your wrist, what direction did I have to go? From your elbow this to your wrist. Distal. If I am moving from your wrist to your shoulder, where is your shoulder compared to your wrist? What direction did I have to get to your shoulder? Okay, look at the arrow. I'm moving from your wrist to your shoulder. Good. Yes. Yes. Now, if I'm moving from your shoulder to your wrist, digital or distal. But digital is a great way to remember because your digits. If I am moving towards your digits, it's distal. If I am moving away from your digits, it is proximal. So tell me, where are your fingers compared to your wrist? Proximal. What direction did I have to move to go from your wrist to your fingers?
It kind of confuses me too when you say where's your fingers compared to your wrist.
Wait, so is that not proximal?
Your fingers
To your wrist?
compared to your wrist in relation to your wrist
It's kind of better when you say
in relation
going
to
from your wrist to your fingers.
right.
Like when you say I'm going from my wrist to your fingers, that would be proximal, and saying go from your fingers to your wrist. I mean, it's distal and proximal.
So when I use the word, and I get why this wording is tripping you up.
Yeah.
This is not you. When I say in relation to. This is equal starting point. So if I say your wrist in relation to your elbow, I know elbow is what? The starting point, and what direction do I have to go to get to your wrist? Distal.
Yeah, because it's like the other way. I'm saying it the other way because
You're saying it the other way because you're right.
The starting is the first, and
It's
then
the
in
first
relationship
thing.
is the second.
What you need to think of is in relation to. Whenever you say this, in relation to equals your starting point. So let's try this. Your elbow in relation to your shoulder. So where is our starting point?
Digital.
Right.
Okay.
Because our starting point was what? Your shoulder.
Yeah.
So your fingers in relation to your wrist. Where's my starting point?
Proximal.
Huh? This is
right.
the wording that I have to use on the test, guys, so we've got to be able to get through this.
Yeah.
What does in relation to mean? Your starting point. Your fingers in relation to your wrist. So if I'm going from your wrist, which is our starting point, to your fingers.
Well, it helps me if I, like, in relation to, I say from. So, like, in my head, I say from. So from, like, maybe
In relation can also mean from.
Yeah.
The way I put it is so you said wrist in relation to shoulder. So I put wrist as the second part of it, and then in
Yep.
quotations or whatever.
Shoulder is the
first part
starting
is
point.
In relation to shoulder. That's the first part of where you're starting, and then the second part is going back. That would be first.
Right. So what this, and this is just semantics. It's the same way to say it. If I say, where's your wrist compared to your shoulder? So where is your wrist compared to your shoulder? We're doing a starting point from your shoulder and moving it on. Yes. Distal. Yeah. But you got the idea. We're moving towards your digits. So I don't know another way to word it, guys. We're just going to have to practice. Whenever I say in relation to, it means specifically that's my starting point. If I say my knee in relation to my hip is the starting point, and I am moving in this direction to my knee.
So you basically do the opposite. Like the last word you say is where you're starting, the first word you say is where you end.
You guys are making this way, way, way too hard.
Can I write how I'm picturing it? It might be a little.
Let me not muddy the water.
Because everyone's gonna have a different way.
Everyone's gonna have a different way.
Because that's how I'm seeing it, like the opposite. Because the word that you say that's first. But yeah, just the way she's saying it, yeah.
The word that I'm saying is your location that you're trying to get to. In relation to is your starting point. So in relation to is setting your GPS, going to a destination. So when I say in relation to, that's starting your GPS. So then we're going to a location, which would be the first one mentioned. You're absolutely right. So if I say my ankle in relation to my knee, where did I set the GPS? And where am I going? What direction do I have to take to get there? Right there. It's just about the wording. And I think you guys are like up here. You're super, super duper overthinking it. We just bring it right back down. All right, you can sit down. We'll practice a few more. So GPS, that's a word you guys all recognize, GPS. I'm just gonna write in relation to equals start GPS. My elbow in relation to my shoulder. Where is my trip started?
Shoulder.
And what direction do I have to go to get to my elbow?
Distal.
There you go. If I said my shoulder in relation to my elbow, where did I start the GPS that time?
Elbow.
And what direction do I have to go to get to the location of my shoulder?
Cross.
There you go.
So question. What makes it, so what if I said head to knee? I guess
That
that's
would be
going away.
cranial. We're just doing proximal and distal right now, which is only extremities.
Okay, okay.
If I am talking about where is my neck in relation to my belly button, I'm starting at my belly button, I'm moving in this direction, cranial. So it doesn't matter which direction we're using, we just happen to be doing proximal and distal right now.
Yeah, sorry.
When I say the term in relation to, that's the location you start your GPS to get to this other location. Where is my house in relation to the school? I set my GPS at the school and it takes me in a direction to my house. Where is the school in relation to my house? I start the GPS at my house and it brings me to the school. Where is my ankle in relation to my knee? My ankle is distal to my knee. My GPS got started at my knee. Does the GPS thing help a little bit in relation to GPS?
No, I just with
Starting point?
yeah.
Okay. Some of you are going to use GPS. Some of you are going to use starting point. Is everybody okay?
So you basically just use proximal and distal for your arms and legs.
Only your arms and legs. Everything else is going to be some of these other. These others are going to be for your trunk. Proximal and distal are just going to be for your arms and legs. I would never say that my neck is, well, I can't say it's proximal because what we're literally doing is measuring how far away am I from my trunk. I can't say my trunk is far away from my trunk. That doesn't work. I can say my elbow is distal or further away from my shoulder. So that's why it's measuring the distance from your trunk. All right, is everyone back on the bus? Fabulous.
We broke down for a minute, but
You know what, guys? Here's the deal, and you guys in TV land too. I don't care. I don't care if we have to circle that same cul-de-sac for the rest of the class. I'm gonna do it until everybody's on the bus. I'm not leaving a man behind. That's my job, is to make sure everyone's on the bus before we keep going. All right, and thank you for letting me use you as my demonstration, my beautiful assistant. Don't wash the arm, it might be worth money someday when my YouTube channel goes viral. Honestly, I don't know, I haven't checked. I don't know.
you never gave us the name of it.
It's public, just look for my name.
Oh.
It's just, I made it public. So just type in Catherine Huff and I have a playlist just for you guys. And all of the anatomy and physiology videos are in that playlist. So yeah, just search my name, it's there. All right, so palm. Palm of my hand, why is it called that? Because this is the palmar surface. The surface that my animals walk on is the palmar surface. Plantar is the bottom of my foot. That's the plantar surface, what we walk on. If I come over and I'm very upset and I'm doing something and I just, what did I do with my feet? I planted my feet. Why do we say that? Plantar. All right. Now what I want to do is I want to demonstrate some movement to help remember. We're getting these pathways. We're getting some pretty profound pathways today. So I'm going to show you what we were doing yesterday as far as movement to remember these directional terms. And you're going to stretch it a little bit.
Fascia is tissue, right?
Fascia is a type of connective tissue that holds the dermis to the underlying musculature.
So plantar fasciitis would be,
Sound it out. What is itis?
it's an inflammation of the foot tissue.
Yes. Inflammation of the connective tissue at the bottom of your foot. Exactly what it is. What about plantar wart?
A word at the
Wart on
bottom.
the
A
bottom.
wart that's found on the bottom of your foot. Exactly. All right. So let me show you my interpretive dance. Yes. Left. Graceful. Right. Just watch for now. You'll have your chance. Cranial. Rostral. Caudal. Dorsal. Ventral. Medial. Lateral. Deep. Superficial. Proximal. Distal. Palmar. Plantar. All right, so you guys are gonna follow me. You guys at the TV home, you can follow along as well. You know the dance. All right, so remember when we say left and right, you are referring, we're doing handshake left and right. We're not doing mirror left and right. All right, are you ready? We're gonna be graceful. We are gonna be methodical. Really mentally match the motion with the word. Left, right, cranial, rostral, caudal, dorsal, ventral, medial, lateral, deep, superficial, proximal, distal, palmar, plantar.
Why is it ventral? What is ventral? Dorsal
Towards-
is back.
Dorsal's towards the back, ventral's towards the front.
Why is it called ventral?
Because this is where you ventilate. It's where your lungs are.
Okay.
All right, again. I'm gonna speed it up a little bit. Now that you've got warmed up, not too fast. Left, right, cranial, rostral, caudal, dorsal, ventral, medial, lateral, deep, superficial, proximal, distal, palmar, plantar. One more time with the list. Going a little faster. Are you ready? Do you think you can handle it? Left, right, cranial, rostral, caudal, dorsal, ventral, medial, lateral, deep, superficial, proximal, distal, palmar, plantar. All right, here's what I'm going to do now. I've shown one. Remember the way to form a major pathway is to do your 3 steps, show one, do one, teach one? I've shown one. You're going to do one. So what I want you guys to do now is go through the list, but you're going to say the action as you do it. Think of the number of pathways we got going here, guys. Auditory, visual, verbal, motion. On the count of 3, you're going to sound it off and do it. I'm going to sit and watch. 1, 2, 3.
Left, right, radial,
Good. Good. Medial. Lateral. That's okay. That's okay. We'll start again. Medial towards the middle. Medial. Middle. 1, 2, 3. Begin.
left, right, radial,
Good. Good. Again. I got all day. Again.
Left, right, radial, rostral, bottom, dorsal, ventral, medial, lateral, deep, superficial, proximal, distal, palmar.
How do we feel? Oh, you're not done. Take your jacket off because you're not done. C'est la vie. I love that, by the way. C'est la vie. I need this over here. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say an action out of order, and you're going to do it. Are you ready? Cranial, medial, towards the middle, dorsal, towards the back, caudal, distal, good, rostral, deep, proximal, cranial, ventral, palmar, right, caudal, dorsal, lateral, good, superficial, proximal, palmar, ventral, medial, good, cranial, rostral, good, dorsal, distal, caudal, proximal, good, cranial, ventral, dorsal, caudal, rostral, left, palmar, cranial. I'm gonna go a little faster. Are you guys ready? A little bit? All right. Left, cranial, dorsal, rostral, caudal, medial, palmar, right, caudal, proximal, distal. This is the interpretive dance that I've been hoping for the whole time, because some of you are getting, and don't get flustered, but some of you end up looking like you're doing this. You're just doing this little disco. It's awesome, and it's for my own amusement. It is. Okay, I'll slow down. I will slow down. We'll do one more. Lateral, cranial, caudal, distal, medial, deep, rostral, palmar, right, ventral, good, caudal, dorsal, cranial, left, palmar, right, dorsal, plantar, medial, good, deep. Give me deep with a sound effect. There you go. Proximal, dorsal, distal, rostral. Nice. See how it's getting easier and easier and easier. Please sit. Well done, guys. My homework for you is to go home and look at this list and have your significant other, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, mother, whoever, do exactly what I just did. But what I want you to do is I want you to teach them these motions. Because what was the third step in paving a mental pathway? Teach one. I've shown one, you've done one, now you teach one. And if you can teach this concept, especially the proximal distal, for those of you having trouble with it, teach your loved one what the difference between proximal and distal is. If you can explain the concept to them, man, that's paving a pathway in your brain. Comments, questions, concerns? All right. These are just the actual definitions. If you didn't know what left and right meant, cranial caudal, we've gone over all of these. Cranial caudal refers to towards the head, towards the tail. Rostral is specific for the face, towards the nose. Dorsal, towards the back, towards the front. Medial, towards the middle. Lateral, towards the sides. Deep, superficial, refers to where it is on location, either on the outside or moving inward inside the body. Proximal, towards the trunk. Distal, away from the trunk. Palmar plantar. Now this is the walking surface of the pad of the foot. If this walking surface is on the front foot, it would be referred to as what? The palmar. And if it is on the back foot? Now the other thing to remember about our dogs and cats is the way that they stand. So I want to go into this just briefly. All right, so if you look at what I've just outlined here, oh wow, I didn't even come close this morning. Humans are what are called plantigrade. For those of you in TV land, I'm standing on top of a table. It's magnificent. Pull my socks up. We are known as plantigrade, meaning that we stand our whole weight on the entire plantar surface of our foot. Dogs and cats are what we call digigrade, where they walk on their toes. So do you see that pad that is up proximal to the foot? These are directional terms. If you look at that big black pad that is proximal to my toes, and now look, get myself in the same orientation as the picture. Here is my foot. Oh, this sock, see how the heel has a black heel on it? When I raise my foot into digigrade, that black mark on my heel is now represented by the pad on that. So if I, yeah, sure, the time I'm gonna fall is when I'm trying to get down. Ugh. Bring this down. You see how that's now in a plantigrade? So technically, this whole surface is either the plantigrade or the palmar, or the plantar or palmar. It just so happens that we do, our entire plantar is weight bearing. There's only the digit plantar surface is weight bearing. Does that make sense to everybody? How if I bring this foot down, you can now see the heel of my sock. And this is now exactly the same as a human foot. Here's the ankle. Up here would be the knee. Does that make sense? All right, we're going to pick it up here on tomorrow. Time flies when we are having fun. Holy smokes, this class goes by fast for me. All right, so we're going to pick it up here tomorrow. We're going to finish this PowerPoint up, our directional terms. We'll do some review. We will practice your wording. Okay, go home and write out some sentences. We'll start tomorrow off by making sure everyone has remained on the bus. And we won't move on until you have. But then tomorrow, after we do that, we are going to get started on chapter 2. We're going to start talking about atoms, electrons, protons, and neutrons. The chapter PowerPoint is already up on my Moodle, so if you want access to that. Now, nothing from chapter 2 will be on the chapter 1 test. Just because we're covering it prior to the test does not mean it's going to cover. So, comments, questions, concerns?
Is this chapter
1. Chapter uno.
Are we gonna review?
Tomorrow we're going to review.
Okay.
Anything else? See ya. Bye, TV audience. I'll see you tomorrow.